Congratulations that you are coming to the end of the pathology residency and are thinking about or actively studying for the boards. In this video we will be discussing some of the best resources to help prepare you for the Anatomic Pathology Board. In a separate video we will discuss the best resources for the Clinical Pathology Board. First, let's talk about how long you should study for the boards. The time frame for how long you should study is variable, since every pathology program is different and some people have had more time to study or others have had more exposure to particular topics and thus more comfortable with those topics. As a general guideline, if you are taking both anatomic and clinical boards, you want to spend approximately 3 to 4 months of dedicated study time. 6 months is probably ideal, so that you do not wind up cramming and can feel confident walking into the test. If you feel that your program has not prepared you well for the exam, you may want to spend more than 6 months studying. If you are just taking the anatomic pathology boards only, you should aim for 3 months of dedicated study time, and for the clinical pathology boards only aim for somewhere between 1 to 3 months of dedicated study time. This breakdown of topics for the AP boards was taken from the AB Path website. The breakdown can differ per year, but overall the most high-yield topics tend to be cytopathology, breast, GI, and dermatopathology. Another topic that is both highly represented on both the anatomic and clinical pathology boards is hematopathology. There are so many resources that are advertised for studying for the boards, that it can definitely be overwhelming. Here is a compiled of some of the best resources for the anatomic pathology boards, separated by online question banks, questions books, board view courses, and other miscellaneous helpful resources. The starred resources are the ones that are really essential. We will go over each resources individually and how to get the most out of your studying. Notice that we have not included books such as Rossi, the WHO series, Cytology by CBIZ, etc. Those resources are great for reading during your residency, but may not be the best of your time in the last few months before you take the boards. Path Primer is one of the most essential question banks, in our opinion. It costs around $500 to $600 for a year subscription, however some residency programs may automatically provide it for their residents. What makes Path Primer so great is not the questions per se. Path Primer questions are often accept questions, which can be confusing and annoying, however Path Primer excels in the explanations to the questions. The explanations are often very detailed, which is great when you are in the beginning to later stages of your studying. Since the explanations are detailed, you probably want to start the question bank earlier on in your study schedule. It may take a long time just to get through 10 to 25 questions, but you will get faster the more questions you do. One tip is to write a sentence or two worth of notes on each question, to help yourself stay engaged and to potentially review if you end up having the time. Path Dojo is a great question bank for the month or two right before the exam. The questions and explanations are pretty brief, so they are much faster to get through when compared to Path Primer questions. The questions are phrased similar to both the RISE and the actual boards, with few if any accept questions. This is a great resource to determine where you still have deficiencies as the exam nears. One really great feature of this exam prep is the virtual slide component. There are few resources for the virtual slide component, which makes this and two other resources we will discuss later, pretty unique. Path Dojo tends to have sales, so for a 2 to 3 month subscription you will likely pay somewhere between $200 to $300. We don't have much to say about the ASCP question bank, since we do not have personal experience with it. User reviews are pretty conflicting, with some people loving the question bank and others thinking that the questions were needlessly difficult. If you have extra time and money, or just want more practice questions, then this may be a good resource, but it is not one of the essential ones. Of note, the ASCP Resident Question Bank does have a virtual microscopy component, which may be good practice before the exam. Now we will turn our attention to the question books, starting with Cytopathology by Fang. This is an amazing cytopathology resource. It basically goes over all the high-yield point of CBIZ in question format. I would suggest to go through the book at least once for the exam. This is also one of the most affordable review books, with a cost of approximately $50 on Amazon. Cytology comprises a pretty significant portion of the boards, so even if it is not your thing, make sure you at least feel somewhat comfortable with the basics. Also be prepared to get at least a couple of virtual cytology slide questions. We won't say much about the AP Board Review by Lefkowitz because it essentially has the same questions as Path Primer, with a lot of questions identical to those on Path Primer. There are a lot of except questions, but similar to Path Primer, the answers are pretty detailed. This is a great resource if you prefer to have a print option as opposed to Path Primer's online format. The McGraw-Hill Review is a little outdated, since it was published in 2013, but the questions are still relevant. The questions do tend to be except questions, which can be annoying, but this question book is a pretty good supplement to all the other resources. If you don't have much time, it is definitely okay to skip this resource, but if you do have time, we suggest that you spend a couple of days or a week or two with these questions. Osler and Oakston are the big review courses. Honestly, choosing either of them would be a good option. If you remember from the overview of the resources, we starred the Osler Board Review, but this is only because it is probably the most popular of the two. Osler has a separate Anatomic and Clinical Board Review, which are a little pricey. The Anatomic Board Review alone can cost up to $1,000 depending on how long the subscription is for. Personally, the best topic review for the course are the bone and soft tissue, dermatopathology, hematopathology, and GI pathology. The other reviews are still good, but those reviews really stood out to us. The Oakston Pathology Review is probably a more economic choice if you are taking both the Anatomic and Clinical Pathology boards, since the review combines both Anatomic and Clinical and the cost is around the same as just the Anatomic Osler Review. The quality and content of the review was great. For Anatomic Path, the GYN, Pediatric, GI, Breast, and Cytopathology were personally amazing. Once again, either Oakston or Osler videos are good options, but having at least one is a good way of keeping your studying focused. There are also amazing and free YouTube resources to guide you in your studying. In terms of a review for breast pathology, Dr. Alexander Dameron has close to a 3-hour review video, which is basically everything you need to know for the boards. If you watch this once or twice, you should be able to get the majority of questions on the exam. Dr. Gerard Gardner really excels at making derm path and soft tissue seem approachable. He has close to 1,000 videos, which can seem overwhelming, but his board review series is pretty good. The 6 Patterns channel is for lung pathology, and is especially pertinent for medical lung, which not everyone is exposed to during their residency. Kurt's Notes not only has great diagnostic guides, which are quick differential and diagnostic reference points per each organ system, but also there are sample quizzes for virtual microscopy. So if you were counting, this is the third resource that offers practice for virtual microscopy. The others are Path Dojo and the ASCP Question Bank. We included this reference for our textbook lovers. This is a pretty straightforward textbook that is much more compact than Rossi and is in outline format. It goes over the majority of diagnoses along with the differentials and can be a great reference. The Washington Manual of Surgical Pathology is another resource for people who prefer to read textbook-like formats. It is a small but dense book and is pretty affordable and can be purchased for approximately $50 on Amazon. The one drawback is that the physical book does not have any images, however the images can be seen in the ebook. I hope you enjoyed this video. To get updates when similar videos become available, please consider liking and subscribing.